And it's obviously a huge privilege to be asked to show in the Gemeentemuseum, and I came over and did a site visit to the project room, which is the space I'm showing in. I'd not visited it before, but it's really important whenever I make a show that the work is made in response to the space. It doesn't have to be overt, but it's always made with the space in mind, because I suppose I'm always thinking about how the viewer is going to negotiate the work and how the work is going to negotiate the architecture that it's placed in. So the paintings specifically, I think, were developed in response to some of the details within the Gemeentemuseum. So the little lamps, for example, in the projects room, these little Japanese lamps you have in the alcoves, I think for whatever reason will have a really nice relationship with this sort of slightly Japanesey feel and the imagery in the paintings. And you know, the other thing is of course the collection, and knowing that my work will be shown in the context of some of my big heroes like Voltaire or Rennie Daniels, and obviously Mondrian. And again, I mean, with the paintings, this is not something I was like consciously thinking about. I found this imagery and decided it could, for whatever reason, somehow be appropriate to the space. But the more you think about it, the more it starts revealing connections, and that's when you know it's good. And I was also thinking about Mondrian and this kind of grid lines that are in these paintings, and this is just an odd little, you know, it's not something that anyone else might necessarily know, but for me it makes me go, yeah, this is right for the space. And knowing that, I feel confident making it. I don't also believe that there's some inherent sense of yourself that you have that isn't created in response to the world. So if you like, you're a kind of collage of the experiences that you have and of the things that you have. And then you kind of digest them and spit them back out into the world. And it's kind of, I think that's the dialogue that you as a person have with society that you live in. And I think that's really what art does. So I go about that in different ways. It might be finding images to work with, to make paintings from, and that can come from lots of different sources. It could be, with these, it's from a computer game. In the past I've used found photographs. Sometimes I take photographs, but I don't really see too much distinction between taking a picture on my camera and taking a picture from the internet. It's all a form of appropriation. Or it can be using found objects. But when I say found objects, they might be my old laptop, for example, which I don't know if you call that a found object or a used object, or my old boots, which definitely bear the traces of the time that I've spent with them, whether it's the impression of my feet inside them or whether it's the scuff marks on the bottom. But it's, I suppose, like with that, it's about literalizing the idea that these have been used by me, and any traces they have on them are traces of the time that they've spent in the studio making things, or on a bike cycling through the park or whatever. But so I'm not trying to say that any of that stuff is inherently, I'm not saying the detail of that is inherently interesting to anyone, because also why should you totally care about my life? But the point is there's a universality to it. So we all have these kinds of experiences, and hopefully it's about trying to find the imaginative space in the banal stuff we all do all the time, and use that to talk about where, I don't know, imagination lies in the world, and how we can go about being interesting and being interested in stuff. I mean, hopefully if you do anything, you're just trying to make people see the world ever so slightly differently, or be receptive to seeing the world differently. That's like the best you can hope for from making art and from what you want people to get from it. So these paintings start with playing a game, a computer game on an iPad on the way up to install the last show I did, and not thinking about art at all, but playing this game. And it's a scrolling computer game where you sort of solve puzzles in a kind of flat space that you move through, your little character moves through. And for whatever reason, this imagery, this sort of architectural modernist office space, and all the neutrality of it, feels very, you could be in any kind of city anywhere, really appealed to me, and really seemed like it would fit with the Gemeentemuseum. So I had that idea. I was like, this could work. Took a little screen grab, so I did forget about it, and then forgot about it. And then came to thinking, okay, I need to develop these set of paintings, but they have to have a relationship with the sculptures that isn't too overwhelming, because the sculptures are really intense. So almost if they could be paintings that are almost like backdrops, as much as they are objects in and of their own right. So again, this kind of window motif in his office space seemed completely appropriate to that relationship that I wanted. And within the game itself, like I say, you scroll through a space, and I really like the idea that as a viewer, when you navigate a painting or when you move through an exhibition space, you yourself are kind of, and because also the museum, the project room is kind of long and flat in a way, so it seemed totally appropriate that it would almost be a kind of scrolling experience. So how to then take that single computer grain image and begin to build it into something bigger than that. And what I did was I noticed first of all that there are these pillars in the computer game space that are just black pillars or just black lines, but I kind of figured that they would be really nice ways to fragment. If you, as a viewer, if you were to just see a painting with that big chubby black line, it wouldn't look good, it would look odd, it would just kill the painting. But if you take that black line out and almost imagine that's a break in the canvas itself, it starts to hopefully do what's happening in the picture, this scrolling thing, and start expanding it from computer game space into like reality, into real space. Which then explains the scale of the paintings. They had to be big enough that they felt, kind of architectural, kind of relate to human scale. So that shift from an iPad scale to this scale is really, really important. And then with the actual fragmentation itself, it came from taking lots of different screen grabs, scrolling through this office space, and then just kind of editing them, playing with the breaks, playing with scales, and trying to get something that felt, on a train when something flickers past out the window, almost trying to accentuate that feeling of like a fragmented viewing that comes from passing. And it's always about, like I say, the relationship between the viewer and the object, and trying to make it so that you have quite a tangible relationship to it, so that your physicality and the physicality of this thing don't feel too separate. I don't want them to feel like they're these kind of higher things that you can't relate to or can only relate to in a hard intellectual sense. I want you to feel them first and foremost, like somewhere in here, and then hopefully begin to think about what they're doing. My expectations of this show at the Gemeentemuseum at the moment are as simple as getting this work finished and being really excited about seeing what these are going to look like, because at the moment they're in my brain and they're starting to on canvases, but it's right at the beginning. So that's the first thing. I'm really excited to see the work there and see how it looks and see what it does and begin to think about that and evaluate that. And then in the longer term, obviously having a show in the Museum on your CV, having so many people come through and see it is obviously a huge deal in terms of hopefully building your professional profile, and people going, yeah, this guy's good and he's making interesting work and it's being shown in a really prestigious and beautiful context. And yeah, I think you don't get these kinds of opportunities very often in your life, and it's really important that you make the most of them when you do, because who knows when you're going to get to show something in a situation is incredibly, like, I don't know, the architecture is just insane. So yeah, but my expectations, it's really hard to predict what's going to happen, but you kind of have to give it 100% and know that if you do that, something good will come from it, and I believe it will.